Welcome today to Collaborating to Build a Relevant Volunteer Program. We are very excited today to have our newest team member, Karina Vargas, leading today's webinar. And let me move to the next slide and officially introduce Karina. Well, I guess I'll start with myself. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Lavinia. I know lots of your names, and I've spoken to lots of you. I'm the VP of Sales and Business Development here at VSys. I've been here now for just a couple years. I had the blessing of starting the week before the pandemic shut down. So it's been an interesting ride, but I am very excited to be with VSys One. Joining me today is VSys' newest employee, Karina Vargas. And VSys was exceptionally excited when Karina came to us looking for a new position because she has been a volunteer manager for 20-some years. We won't go into details, Karina. And she spent 10 years as a VSys One user for obviously one of our clients, a large children's hospital in Southern California. So she has a lot of experience with VSys products, the whole slew of them, but she brings to the table for us here at VSys the experience of having been an actual volunteer manager. Because as you know, VSys is full of a bunch of IT geeks who are passionate about volunteering, but who have never been volunteer managers. So to have someone like Karina on board who can give us ideas on how to improve our product, just as many of you do, and to give us input and to talk volunteer manager to volunteer manager, especially for all of you who say to us, well, what are other volunteer managers doing? What would be a best practice? And we don't feel qualified to answer that being technical people, but now we have Karina. So hooray, hooray. And Karina is doing today's webinar. So I will move us to the next slide, and we're going to have a poll question coming up now. So just so that all of you get ready, our next poll question will appear on the screen in a minute, but you can do this poll if you just joined and didn't do the first poll by either texting or scanning this QR code or going to the internet to this site. And the thing that we're most excited about, again, with using this poll is that you all will see what each other is answering. Because often clients say to us, I want to hear what other VSys clients are doing. Tell us what they're doing with such and such. So this is your opportunity to share information with each other about how things are working. So here is our next poll question. Bum, 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 bum. Share an example of a partnership that you currently have as a volunteer manager.
All right. As you answer that question, I want to just first thank you, Lisa, for that introduction and for having me share on today's topic, and a big thank you for all of you that have joined us today, attending and getting that participation going. So like she said on the screen here, we have a question about the current partnerships that you have. So we're interested in just typing in the name, either it could be a position within your organization or an agency, areas, people that you've connected to, a partnership that you have within your organization that has really been key for you. So it's awesome to hear. So in today's topic with collaborating to build a relevant volunteer program, I hope that today's topic is useful and applicable to your world in volunteerism, and so it's interesting to see some of these connections. So I saw colleges and schools a lot in our previous session as well. There's great other volunteer managers, food banks, pet therapy. I do remember collaborating very much with infection prevention, especially with the pandemic, kind of getting the latest and greatest on what's going on. Patient experience, senior leadership. That's awesome that you have a table with senior leadership, COO, vice president. That's awesome.
We're seeing a lot of human resources this time, too.
And high schoolers. And if you don't have a response to share, that's okay. You don't have to answer, but you can share. I believe on this one you can also share multiple times. So if you have a couple different ones. So faith-based organizations, that's also great organizations to collaborate with. Nursing managers, and I'm sure maybe department leads and things like that have also been areas of people you've partnered with.
Please just get me to the webinar. Well, we'll give folks a couple more times to answer these, and then we'll move on to the webinar.
Yes. Okay. Employee health or associate health or occupational health.
All right. So I'm going to move us on.
Thank you all for sharing on that. So I want to first start us off with reviewing the objectives for today. These are the goals that we have in mind. First, I'm going to be speaking about two approaches when creating partnerships with key constituents, so that these stakeholders or constituents, collaborators, partners. I'll be sharing some insight that I've taken from my experience in project management, information from that realm of management, borrowing the ideas and applying it to volunteerism. Secondly, I'll be demonstrating how it is that we can connect. If you can click on the slide there, Lisa, we'll be talking about how we can connect to the current needs that you've identified, whether it's be social determinants of health, key performance indicators, HCAPs, etc. How we're going to connect that to our stakeholders and how we can create those action items. And then lastly, how I hope that we have a moment to dialogue about the topic. And maybe even get to hear from you about some of the challenges that you are facing in your role as volunteer leaders. And so it's great to hear from you. And that's my effort to make you a key stakeholder in today's topic. So again, thank you for joining us today. So today, as I mentioned before, I'm adapting information that has been well known and published in the area of project management, and I'm applying it to the real needs that we are facing in volunteerism today. Within project management, typically a need will initiate a project, a request of some kind, or a need will initiate a project, and then a project manager will create a project plan and collaborate with stakeholders. So similarly, I'm hoping that volunteer leaders can initiate a project, if you will, but the project or the need being the importance of building relevancy within our program. I'm hoping that is a need that you bring about within your organization. And then so we'll be talking about how we connect with people that play a vital role in determining the success or the failure of our program. And these people can really impact one way or another. And so today we're going to be reviewing two approaches to stakeholders. But before I dive in, we have a question here on the screen that many of you are already starting to answer. I do want you to think about the partnerships that you have. Have they been built intentionally or organically? Meaning, did you seek out these people and did you go find them, or are they just happenstance? Did it just happen to connect with them, or are they a little bit of both? Maybe you're unsure of, and that's okay. Depending on how long you've been working within your area, in your program, sometimes we get connected to people. It just happens to be we get connected, and sometimes we have to go find the people. So I just want to get an idea of those intentional organic connections. All right. Similar to our last session, I think the majority of people have a little bit of both. Being, people that people we've connected just by chance, or people that we've had to seek out. And I know some of you have a question about the copy of today's presentation. We will be posting a copy of this recording, the slide deck, and also a resource that I have for you. A tool that I want to give you and put in your hands. We will be posting that on our VSys Voices webinar website.
I'll add that Becky just responded C as well, so
okay,
got an additional C in there, but I think everybody has responded at this point.
Sounds good. So let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. So thank you for sharing on that. So the question that I had was because I want to really talk about these two approaches again to stakeholder management. Again, stakeholder management being the official terminology that is used within project management. There are two types of management. So one's called relational and the other one's called perspective. And so you'll hear me use the terminology either stakeholder management or partnerships, collaborators. I think for the purposes of using it in volunteers, and I'm kind of referring to the same thing. So if you get us into the next slide there, Lisa, we'll talk about the first approach in stakeholder management is relational stakeholder management. In relational stakeholder management, it is establishing connection and involving and engaging with constituents. It's nothing formal per se. The focus is just really making connections and keeping those connections running smoothly and staying alive. Think of it, for example, when you have a connection on social media. You go on your social media account and you find your friends, the people you already know, and you link with them. And then in time, you'll start getting these friend suggestions because maybe you share someone in common, you have a common friend, you'll start getting these suggestions. That's kind of like relational stakeholder management. Like you'll know someone and then maybe by chance happen to be, connected to somebody else. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like LinkedIn, how they have connections, these first degree, second degree, and third degree connections. I'm not sure if you've ever tried connecting with someone on LinkedIn that has a third degree of separation. LinkedIn doesn't let you connect because it doesn't see that there is a sort of a natural organic connection to you. So you have to get someone within less degrees of separation from you in order to connect. So consider the professional relationships that you've built over the years, and not just in your current role. Think of previous roles you've had, people that you've been engaged in different projects, maybe not even just secluded within the world of volunteerism, but even in other realms. And so those might be people that you may be able to connect with depending on the need or the situation that changes you're trying to bring about in your program. But also, I would recommend looking at any personal connections you might have and that you can leverage off of. Maybe there's a neighbor with a certain skill set or certain knowledge, a friend, someone within your faith community, or even the parent of a child on your kid's sports team. Just think of all the relationships that you have, the potential connections. Dedicating some time to staying connecting with them is really the essence of relational stakeholder management. Now, the second approach we have in stakeholder management is called descriptive. This is also focusing on, connecting, making those links, but it's in a more formalized approach. It's utilizing certain methods, tools, and strategies. It's knowing when and how to connect with stakeholders or engage with stakeholders so that we can minimize the negative impact that they might have on our project, or also maximize the positive impact that they have. Sometimes when it comes to stakeholders, people only think of the people that can help me get to where I need to go. But in stakeholder management, think about the people that might step in and can cause a barrier. They also have a stakeholder. In other words, they can have an influence or an effect on your project or program or the changes you might want to bring about. So those are people you want to bring early on because clearly they can influence in one way or another what's going to happen with your program. With prescriptive stakeholder management, think of the targeted connections that come to your social media account. So imagine you're on social media, you post a couple things, you use a hashtag, you like the hashtag or follow it, you watch certain videos, engage with the video more than 3 seconds, and you affect the algorithms, and all of a sudden you start having certain feeds in your social media accounts, and because they are targeting you. I was talking to my husband who started on his social media, and I said, careful what you watch, anything more than 3 seconds, it'll affect the algorithm. And sure enough, he has a collection of monkey videos, people who have monkeys as pets, and that's all he gets in his social media, and I think it's hilarious because I did warn him about that. But again, it's targeting. They are targeting him because he showed an interest. with prescriptive stakeholder management is you targeting people intentionally. Again, it's using certain methodologies and strategies, and we'll be talking about some of the approaches, not to put monkey videos in their accounts, but how to approach them to help them be partners and collaborators and stakeholders with what you're trying to do. It does require more time and intentionality, but our focus is these long-term relationships and the long-term results that we have with these people. Because sometimes there could be some temporary changes. A person could be on your corner in one matter, but then maybe shift approaches. That's okay. Just the important thing is to focus on the long-term goals that you have for making these program changes and helping make your volunteer program more relevant. So we're going to be talking about some tools like identification, analysis, and planning of our stakeholders, that these people that can exert interest or power into programs or the ideas that we want to bring about. Okay, so we'll get into that today. So as we move on to our next slide, I want us to think about, I'm going to share a little bit about within project management. Whenever, like I said, there's a project that is initiated, usually a project manager will really clarify expectations, what it is that we're trying to do, and identify the stakeholders and give everyone a role. Again, in a project management, in the project management realm. But similarly, the first thing for us to do is to clarify expectations, and the biggest thing we need to clarify is what it is that we are trying to attempt to impact or influence. So for us in volunteerism, it first means that we need to identify clearly with what our needs are. Whether it's a need that you're trying to target within your organization or your community. This needs to happen first before we even start thinking about who it is that we're going to partner. And so I want to hear from you one more time. Let's go into our next poll question here. You might have already identified with certain needs within your organization or community. So I want to just hear from you, what are some of the more urgent or relevant issues that are impacting your volunteer program today? So feel free to go ahead and text your answers there. Okay, recruiting. I've heard that even on our previous session with the situation as we have it. There are a lot of vacancies, a lot of people having to basically start from the ground up. And honestly, what a great opportunity. I know that you can look at it glass half full, glass half empty, but what a great opportunity for you to rebuild a stronger volunteer program and have that, making it, connecting it to the needs that are impacting your organization. So retention, keeping people, restarting programs. I hear you.
Wow, it's interesting to see that all of you have a lot of the exact same challenges and needs. This is pretty prevalent across the country, across the continent, I should say.
Rebuilding, recruiting, starting over, filling vacancies.
Yeah, there was a lot of turnover in VSys 1 clients we saw during the pandemic, and still today. We've been doing lots and lots of training for people that are new in their roles and need to learn VSys.
And I know that many of you are managing a program with, trying to recruit volunteers, but also some of you are having to fill some staff positions, because I'm sure some of you have had that impact as well. Within the hospital, maybe specifically within your volunteer program, you've had some vacancies that you're trying to fill, and you're one person down and trying to do it all, and I hear you.
I always say that everybody is doing a job and a half at this point, if not two people's work.
No.
Good. Well, I'm going to move us to the next slide, Karina.
All right. And thank you all for sharing insight on, what the most current needs are. Okay, so in order to create a relevant volunteer program, it's important to first identify with the needs. I know that we have listed some of the needs, and a lot of it tends to be behind the recruitment and rebuilding, but we have to be able to identify and find, identify the need, and like I said, identify with the need. Like it's something that we really want to target. because sometimes we know of needs, we hear of what's happening in the organization, and we want to do everything, but we have to really target the things that we can have the most impact on. I know that with what you had mentioned, there's a lot of need within your program, but in order to build a relevant volunteer program, I encourage you to step out a little bit and think about the needs that are happening within your organization or the community by looking at maybe some other publications. So if you go ahead and click on the slide there, Lisa, if you aside from the recruitment and retention that I found rebuilding, if you can connect with some of the organizational needs, and if you're not familiar with what the organizational needs or their or the approaches, where they're putting their effort, I encourage you to look at some publications on the needs and the trends that your organization has published. So things like your annual reports. I've gone in and some of our clients, I'll look at I'll bring up their name, I'll type in the name of the hospital system, and then put annual report 2021. And I'm getting to see, as just a person online researching, what it is that your organization is focusing on. They might even print their key performance indicators, or maybe even print out some financial reports that lets you know where it is that they're putting their funding. If you can build a program, a volunteer program, that identifies with the need of an organization, I think you have a better chance of finding other stakeholders, other people of influence and power that can help you carry out your program. And so it's not sort of staying within just the area or the mentality of only volunteer programs, stepping out and saying, what can our program do for the organization? What is it that the organization is wanting to do? Maybe they're targeting something related to social determinants of health that is big. You've heard us mention that, in other VSys Voices if you attended that, or HCAS if you're from within healthcare, or maybe there's something within your community. I used to work in the nonprofit sector before I came into healthcare, and we would partner very much with community health organizations, and maybe your city or your county or your state has some kind of health assessment for your community that identifies some real needs, whether it's homelessness. I remember years ago it was teen pregnancies and really targeting things like that, or children that have not been, children under 5 that have not been vaccinated, So what is it that your volunteer program can connect to the needs within the organization or the community? Another place to look at, if you can click on there, Lisa, is maybe a survey of internal or external needs. Maybe you're actually just going out and finding some answers. It doesn't have to be something formal. Maybe it's just some meetings with a couple of people of asking questions like, what isn't getting done? What long-standing issues or needs do we have? How can my volunteer program assist in the issues you have going on here? And so it's really opening ourselves up to think of our volunteer programs not in the traditional sense of just within the hospital systems, really thinking outside of the box, and I think connecting and getting a survey of what those needs are could be a helpful place. Now, today I'm not trying to convince you that this is the way to go, because that I'm just talking about how aligning is important. Our VSys Voices webinar that we had in January last month, 2022, we had Joan Cardolino speak about the importance of rebuilding and rewriting the infrastructure of our volunteer programs. And if you haven't watched that, I highly recommend you watch that. But she stated that ignoring topics like social determinants of health or other important data can't be the way that we operate anymore. We can't ignore that as volunteer leaders. We need to build programs that are around these types of needs. And so again, I'm not here to convince you to do that. Joan Cardolino did a great job of speaking on that. Today, I'm trying to make a connection between this need and, again, these partnerships, because now once I've identified a need, the need will help me target who are my key stakeholders. So it really starts here. Okay? Thank you, Lisa. so moving on to when we are developing and managing relationships. Number one, the first thing we want to do is then identify the stakeholders. Again, the stakeholders are driven by what it is what need it is that I'm targeting. Let's say my volunteer program has a way of making an impact on a need like homelessness. Who are the key stakeholders that have either power or have an impact or can have some kind of influence or an interest in that particular need? Those are the people that are going to help you cause a ripple in this and impact this particular need. So again, your stakeholder identification needs to be driven by the need. So if you have several targeted needs, then you'll have several sets of stakeholders for each of those types of needs. So think of, again, the people within your personal or professional circles, and you can even ask them who else might have an interest or might be impacted if a program centered around this need is successful or fails. Who might be impacted? Okay. The second thing is the understanding the motivation for which they've gotten involved in a need like that. So the intention really understanding their motivation really drives their intention. So identifying stakeholders like sponsors, beneficiaries, or both. If you can go ahead and click on there, Lisa. Sorry, I moved my screen here and I didn't say that for a second. Okay, so yes, identifying them as sponsors, beneficiaries, or both can help you understand their intention as you work with them. A sponsor is someone that is maybe a decision maker. It could be someone that is in charge of the funding or has a handle in the implementation of a program that would be centered around that need. They are the people of maybe that could be held accountable if a program succeeds or not. It could be someone like a department liaison or a leader in your organization. A beneficiary is someone that receives value or leverage from this idea coming to life. Typically, they are the first person that raise concerns, if there's any concerns about the matter. An example of that could be maybe a community partner, a community member. It could be a patient. Or you might have someone that is both sponsor beneficiary. So someone that is both, they could be held accountable for the success or the action that needs to be taken within this plan, but they also receive something from that. A great example would be a volunteer. A volunteer might benefit because maybe they have time, they need experience, they need hours, especially our high school or college age volunteers or people who are changing careers. But they also are a key stakeholder because they are maybe the ones who are going to help take the action in this new program that you might be creating. So the people who are both sponsors and beneficiaries really are your strongest champions for change. And then the other thing in developing and managing relationships would be to do an analysis of your stakeholders. So if you were approaching your stakeholders with the relational approach, the first one that I spoke with, I really just suggest making a list of your stakeholders, again, based on the needs you have, and then just begin to connect with them, just staying on top of, in communication with them. And that's pretty much it. Again, there's nothing really formal about the relational approach, but if you are wanting to use the prescriptive approach, I offered you a tool today that will help you analyze the level of interest, which is the amount of effort they might be putting in, and the level of power, the amount of influence that they might have over this particular idea. So today I created I didn't create it today, but for today I want to show you a tool that I created that I hope to get to you at the conclusion of our time together. And Lisa's opening up the file. So I created an Excel template that will help you list your stakeholders. And what we want to do is rate the level of interest and power from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest. And so I have in my this template here, I have a couple names. I kind of just made up a target need that I'm focusing on here. And let's say Lisa has joined me as a stakeholder and She's a part of VSys. That's what she does. And we are working on creating a COVID clinic, for example, and that's she's joining us. And I would say in this case, she is a sponsor because she's not benefiting from it, but she can maybe help me bring this idea to life. And then from here, I want to rate her level of interest. How interested is she in this? We'll make up a number, Lisa, let's say. And I did create this template where if you click on a little drop down, it gives you some options there, the little arrow going down. Yeah, you can either type it or the little drop down. You can choose a number. So she's highly interested in it. And let's say she has maybe a low amount of power on that, just an idea.
Since I don't work for the organization, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is your, again, you are analyzing. And if you see on the grid below, Lisa's name showed up on here. And you'll see people show up in different grids. And so we have people that are low interest, but they have high power, high interest, low interest, low power. And Lisa ended up falling in our bracket of she's really interested, but she doesn't have a lot of authority or power or influence over this idea. And so this would be for this particular need. And I also suggest, down at the bottom left-hand corner, I put the name of this spreadsheet says Cause 1. Feel free to duplicate this and use this for your second project or second need. Again, because the need will really drive who are your stakeholders and even where they lie. Maybe in this idea, Lisa maybe isn't a high influencer when it comes to the COVID clinic. But if I was doing a revamp of my data system in the organization, okay, maybe she has a lot. So maybe your boss might have more power, more influence. So, thank you, Lisa. That's a great example. Big boss. So as you can see, I've created it so that it just populates these names for you. And if you were to go up to the top of the spreadsheet and erase everyone and just start your own list, it will happily populate the list that you have. So
I'm just crushed, Karina, that there's no Joe Burrows in here or, Pat Mahoney.
I know. I was like, Tom Brady, he has high power. They just sent their names on there. But yeah, you use this as you need that.
So that sheet will be in the VSys Voices webpage along with the recording of this webinar, just so that you all know.
Exactly. And so if we can go back to our slide and go to the next one there, Lisa, I want to talk a little bit more about what it means for people to fall into these brackets or these regions. Again, this is part of our stakeholder analysis. So once you know where people lie, then you kind of interpret what it means, who it is that you can most connect with, and what influence they have over your power. So for people that fall in the low interest, high power region, those are people that you want to keep satisfied. You want to keep them informed. They do have a lot of decision-making power, but typically they might only get involved if there's a problem with, this plan that you are wanting to implement. And so just regular contact is important with them, but just know that, that they may not be as involved. With people in the high interest, high power region, you definitely want to manage closely. They are your decision makers. They have the most to gain or to lose, and they need to be kept fully aware. You want to get their buy-in early on, even giving them a sense of ownership over certain parts of this program, because they can really help be that champion for you. People who fall in the lower left column or section there, the low interest, low power, you're going to get minimum effort from them. They're going to be very infrequent to any meetings or planning that you have regarding this, any program changes. Maybe they might have low knowledge or low input because they are not very aware of they're a stakeholder, but maybe they don't have as much knowledge. So you want to just update them, but you probably won't be engaging with them as much. And people in the lower area, the high interest, low power, you want to keep them informed. They can be sometimes a bit of a challenge. Sorry to Lisa fill in there in that region. They can be a challenge because they could go flipping from being super supportive and then all of a sudden to being resistant. When they're supportive, they're great champions, but then all of a sudden they say, wait, they have a lot of voice, and they could potentially be a negative influence into others. So you want to keep them informed, but just realize they don't really have a lot of power over the program. And so the people that are you want to really highlight are the people in that top right-hand corner. So as you think about the stakeholders that you might put on a grid like that, I want to find out from you. Some of these people might fall from within your organization or from external connections. So those stakeholders that you had mentioned previously, let's go to our next poll question. Are they people that are coming, or partnerships that you have from within your organization or externally? I want to hear what you have to say. It might be a little bit of both. Again, and it obviously is driven by the need, so
it's also driven by your type of organization. If you're Meals on Wheels, you may do a lot more external, where if you're a hospital, you may do a lot more internal. And I think this is changing over time as well. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting to see people's responses come up.
Okay. All right, so it's more internal. Okay.
All right, I'm going to move us to the next slide. I don't see this changing, so here we go.
So again, once we've identified our need and our stakeholders, what we need to do from there is plan on how we're going to best approach our stakeholders. So I have a video I want to show you first before we get into planning that, and it's about the 80-20 rule. So in 1906, Italian economist Wilfredo Pareto discovered that 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the population. And this 80-20 distribution became famous for occurring in multiple times. Like, did you know that 20% of the world's population controls about 80% of the land? Or you wear 20% of your clothes 80% of the time? Or that 20% of customers account for 80% of their complaints? This is known as the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, and it shouldn't be like a rule that you always use that will always come to life, but it's a great tool that you can use in life to help you be more effective and productive. So if we were to use an example, imagine you're making a to-do list of things that you need to get done on a daily basis. If you can identify the top 2 things that bring you the most results, and then from there focus 80% of your efforts in getting those 2 done, and then the remaining effort on the other items that you have on the list. The idea is that although you may not get through the entire list, you got to at least target the top 2 of the most important things. So again, this 80-20 distribution is a tool that I'm bringing up today, and you can go ahead and pause that one, Lisa, if you want. Or even moving into the next slide, that's fine. So this 80-20 rule is, I bring it up today because I know that the reality is you are overwhelmed. I know that you have a lot to do and very little time in the day. There's so many things that are happening in your program. And so I'm hoping that using a tool like the 80-20 rule will help you be more productive and be more effective in getting that, building those partnerships that you need to have to build, to make the changes in your program. So here are some examples of how we can use the 80-20 rule. 20% of your activities account for 80% of your results. So the key is, what are those activities, those 20% of activities? We refer to them as the vital few. What are those vital few things that are really driving the results? You can identify them and focus your attention on those. It will help you be more productive in your program. Another example is 80% of the work you are currently doing is only of 20% value. In the 80-20 rule, we refer to this as the trivial many. There are so many people that really focus on the busyness, but at the end, they're really not producing a lot of results. And so I'm not sure if you can identify with that feeling of just, I'm super busy. There's so many things to do. I'm super busy. But really, is it giving us the results that we need within our program? And so, again, it's focusing on those 20% that bring those results. Another example, just a little fact, Typically, 20% of your staff are doing 80% of the work. Well, fast. Another example of the 80-20 rule is 80% of your volunteer program revamp efforts are only achieved by the first 20% effort. So meaning sometimes we'll have this idea to revamp, and the majority of the changes really happen in that first 20% because, again, we get busy and sometimes the efforts will sort of die off. So really just get started and drive and push hard. Another example is 20% of the stakeholders that you've identified will have 80% of the influence over your program success. So again, this is why I brought up the 80-20 rule. Because of the influence grid that we created, we can actually identify very easily who are those 20% of stakeholders that we really want to partner with, collaborate with to help bring more results. So people that fall in that high power, high influence bracket are the people that we want to influence. Another example before we go into our next topic of the 80-20 rule is we hear generally that 80% of what we share on the webinar is only retained by 20% of those viewing, and that's okay. We've accepted it that it's the vital few, trivial many, again, that it's heard in the 80-20 rule. But I am hoping that at least 80% of you listening today at least walk away with 20% of what I'm sharing today. So I'm hoping something has stuck with you, and I really do encourage you to, again, think more about that. Vital few, trivial many. Am I focused on the vital few things, or am I really busying myself with just the trivial many that won't bring me the most results? And hoping that can help you target which stakeholders you need to collaborate with and bring those efforts and changes in your program. So as we move on to concluding, I want to have a moment where we can maybe hear from you. You can either feel free to type in the chat if you wish to be unmuted. I want to hear your thoughts about today's topic or any challenges you might be facing in your volunteer program. So Lisa can unmute you if you want to just type in there if you would like to be unmuted.
I'm also curious how people felt about Poll Everywhere, so I'd love you to type in the chat how you felt about that. We probably should have made it a poll question next time. Yeah.
Yeah, if anyone has any experience with stakeholder management or building collaborations or maybe any particular aspect of today's session that you want to dialogue about, feel free to do so.
Yeah, it's very interesting how the pandemic has changed who our key stakeholders are and who we're building partnerships with. I mean, just the fact that, we saw a lot of clients working on COVID vaccination clinics, and it was something totally outside the realm of what they had been doing. And volunteer units are being pulled constantly into new directions. So this is interesting to us as to who you see your stakeholders as being. From the technical side, we see a lot of our clients asking us to integrate with other systems. They want VSys talking to environmental health. They want VSys talking to HR systems or to patient care systems or, Workday, NetSmart. All these integrations are coming up. So I think that is a lot of where our future is going. But I see a couple chats of people liking VSys Anywhere. Amanda asked if we have suggestions for getting stakeholders to buy in to ideas. It feels like stakeholders are overwhelmed and exhausted, and it's hard to get buy-in nowadays.
Yep. So when we're trying to get their buy-in, I really suggest bringing out the common goal that you both have and how both of you can really benefit or how your program is there to scratch their back, if you will, how we are there to help their job be easier, that you have a strong volunteer force, or that you're looking to bring a strong volunteer force. I know many of you are still rebuilding your programs after being out for 2 years, but that you're looking to build the next level, or the next
version 2.0, Karina.
Exactly, version 2.0 of the volunteer program, that you really want to target on this particular need that's really going to help them out. So I think it's a little bit of the marketing, but we had a webinar in our VSys Voices on managing up, and it's really about how we're going to present your program in a way that is going to say, oh yeah, okay, so you're here to help me. If we present it as, I want you to sit in a bunch of meetings with me, they may not, and they may not want to, be a part of that. But if you're saying, I'm looking to partner with you to help meet some of the needs you have, I think you'd be a great partner for us. It's something that will, a great partner for us to build the latest and greatest version of our program. So that might be a way to approach it.
That survey of needs often helps as well, because I know that, especially with the pandemic, every unit, every organization seems to have more work and less people, and to find out where their needs are and then to see if volunteers can fill them really helps.
Because a survey of need can be just a conversation. Take someone, go for a power walk with someone in the hospital. You want to stretch your legs, or have someone, have lunch, or just coffee, or just a quick check-in meeting with someone within your organization or within the community that you see as a stakeholder, and just say, I'm just interested to find out what are some of the needs you're having. I'm surveying different areas to find out how our program can really, make an impact or bring some change. And so hearing from them would be, survey of need would be a great way to kind of start planting the seed of, hey, you might want to also partner with us.
Patty asked when we did the Managing Up webinar, and I'll look that up in a second. It is recorded on the VSys Voices page, but let me look at when the date of that was.
Yes, I know it was definitely last year, what I can do as well is, and I know in the next few slides we'll have some resources, I can update, before we publish the slide deck, I can make sure that the Managing Up VSys Voices link is added to
in there. And that link, the resources page also has the link to the full 80/20 video if you wanted to watch that with the sound on.
Exactly.
Tracy's mentioning that they have a new VP of Patient Experience, and she has a lot of great ideas about how to involve volunteers more to improve the patient experience.
There's your buy-in. Yeah. Don't delay.
Idea.
Yeah. Don't delay.
Patient
partner with them.
Especially for the accreditors, right? Maureen adds that the 80/20 rule applies to so many things and is a great reminder to prioritize what gives you the most impact for your organization. Yeah. Great comments, ladies.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that happens to you even in your daily life as 80/20. Sometimes I'll come in the kitchen, I'm like, I need to wash the dishes. But I need to clean the pantry. And then I just focus on the things that aren't the biggest impact. My kitchen will look cleaner if I just wash the dishes. That's like my vital few, just focus on that. But I wanted to avoid and just focus on so many other things in my kitchen. The same thing might be happening in our program. We might just be like, I need to do these other things, and they're so important. Yes, they are important, but they are not the most important things within your program. So focusing on that is important.
Patty's agreeing with you. Absolutely true, she says.
Get the dishes washed, right?
Yeah. Well, we're at 11:55, so I'm going to move you to our summary, Karina.
Awesome. So just to recap what we've covered today, just make sure that we've touched on all the objectives for today. So we talked about two different approaches, the relational and the prescriptive approach to managing our stakeholders. Again, we can take a very casual kind of connection, or we can be more intentional about connecting with them. The other one, let's see.
I lost my screen here, ladies. 1 second here while I try to figure out what went wrong. There we go.
There we go. All right. The second one was we talked about how first we need to identify the need, and the need will let us know, really drive who it is that we want to build the partnership with, because not all partners will be great for all ideas. So the need really then will help us offshoot with who our partners are, and then from there, how to interact with those particular sets of stakeholders. The last thing we talked about was just getting to hear from you. We also use the influence grid tool that we want to get again into your hands so that you can start to use that and really put that to use. So we'll be publishing all of that together. So I do have one more slide as we wrap up, and it's just a quote that is from Robert Porter Lynch, and it says, "A true champion without a cause is entrapped energy. A great cause without a champion is but an elusive dream, but a great cause with a true champion is the realization of a vision." And so I'm hoping that you can identify, that cause, that need that you can connect with, but that you also identify even the champions that are going to come alongside you and realize that vision. Robert Porter Lynch does some great work with finding champions, change champions, and I did add him to the resources page. And again, I'll make sure to add the managing up video as well, since I shared that. So some of the resources will be connecting on the slide deck for you. All right, and thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, here's an example of the resources page. Again, we'll get that up on the VSys Voices page along with the recording of this webinar later this week. And we thank you all for joining us. Just a heads up that next month's technical webinar is on the update to VSys that is taking place in the next week or so, or it actually started this week. So take careful attention to the webinar invites when they come out the first week in March, because I think you will really enjoy seeing the improvements and cool new features in VSys 1 anywhere and live. And thank you again for joining us. Thank you for your support of VSys 1.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Take care.